It's mutual. Yeah, we miss you too, brother. So I figured I'd go live today for a little while, and good to see you here, Logos. Thank you, Vina. Take some time to answer some questions and reveal an incredible secret behind an Elon that I've been working on recently. So in the meantime, I'll take a little bit of time to answer some questions. You guys are currently looking at one of 7 different Elons that I've written. Each one is about 45 feet long. This particular one was was completed on the 8th day. It was done technically in 7 days. And the length of the scroll we're looking at right here is 45 feet, as stated. And perhaps I can go into some of the specifics as to what we're actually looking at here. But we'll give it a minute to see who's all going to join in and where everyone is at. Can I start learning Sod if I haven't read Mishnah or Gemara? So, according to the opinion of the Gaon of Vilna, one should learn Sod first. And these are the head letters of the word Sidur, right? Sidur is Sod, Drosh, Remez. And the Gaon of Vilna says that the reward for doing this is Peshat. That Peshat becomes a reward. However, when a person studies Peshat first, oftentimes it becomes Tepesh, which means a fool. So yes, you can learn Sod first, according to that opinion. However, can you learn it without reading the Mishnah and the Gemara? Or can you really understand Sod? Well, you could study Sod without it, but you couldn't fully understand it without studying Mishnah, Gemara. You'd need to at least know the Midrash more than the Mishnah and the Gemara, I would say. You would need to study parts of the Talmud and parts of the Midrash, especially Midrash Rabbah and the Agada, to really start to access the Sod. Mishnah, not so much, because there really isn't a lot of Kabbalah encapsulated inside of the Mishnah. There is if you know how to look for it, but a lot of it deals with like religious practices and like halakha, like simple halakha. All right. The tarot bear says yes, please. Okay, yeah, so what we're looking at is called an Elon Gedal, which means the great Elon. An Elon Gedal, so Elon comes from the Aramaic word for tree, and Gedal obviously means great. So Elon Gedal means the great tree. And these Elon or Elonot were Kabbalistic scrolls that were used in order to navigate the secrets of Kabbalah, the secrets of Torah. When we use the term Kabbalah, this term has a stigma attached to it because it's been adopted by Western esotericism and different Western occult traditions which have profaned it. And in truth, that's not actually Kabbalah. The word Kabbalah means to receive, and it refers to the reception of the Torah on Mount Sinai by Moshe Rabbeinu. And so when he received, which is the word Kabbalah or Kabel, when he received, it is understood that he not only received the Torah from God on Mount Sinai, but he also received the instruction, the understanding behind the Torah, which was not written down. And so this became our oral tradition, and the oral tradition is called Kabbalah. Furthermore, it is written, and you will create these things according to the pattern that I showed you on the mountain. And this teaches us that on Mount Sinai, in addition to receiving the oral tradition, which was the understanding of the Torah, which he then passed down to the 70 elders, whose numerical value is Sod, meaning secret, which has a value of 70, he received a pattern. And this is again alluded to in the verse, and you will create all of these things according to the pattern that I showed you on the mountain. This, of course, refers to Mount Sinai. And this teaches us that Hashem showed to Moshe Rabbeinu a pattern. And all of the objects and instruments inside of the tabernacle were created in accordance with this divine pattern that Moshe Rabbeinu received. And there are places in the Torah which hint to what that pattern was. There's a verse that says, and he traveled to a place called Mara, and Mara means bitter. The waters of that place were bitter. And he showed them there a tree, and he placed the tree in the water, and the water became sweet. The idea behind this is that this tree is this divine pattern that he revealed. And the bitter water refers to the lower interpretations, the more external or simple interpretations. In one place, the Torah is likened to water. In another place, the Torah is likened to bread. In another place, the Torah is likened to oil. In another place, the Torah is likened to light. And so these different qualities or different ways in which the Torah was described refer to the different levels of interpretation. One interpretation of the Torah is likened to water. One interpretation of Torah is likened to bread. One interpretation of Torah is likened to oil. And one interpretation of the Torah is likened to light. And so then therefore, all of these different levels are called pardes, or Pishat, Remez, Drosh, Sod, whose head letters spell the word paradise. And there's a great story of Rabbi Akiba and his friends entering into Pardes, which means the inner dimensions or the inner levels of the Torah, where they beheld certain things, so on and so forth. So that's just like a basic overview of what's going on those levels. Now, to go ahead and take a look at what we're looking at here. So this is the primordial beginning. And the primordial beginning, especially when dealing with very advanced Kabbalah, deals with this concept of the Simsum, a concept that anyone who's studied Kabbalah for any amount of time, or authentic Kabbalah, which is only in the Torah, right? The other types of Kabbalah that start with a Q and Kabbalah that starts with a C refer to other systems. Kabbalah with a Q is Hermetic and is oftentimes confused with the Kabbalah that refers to a K, which is Jewish. Kabbalah with a Q, which is Hermetic in nature, refers to the Western esoteric traditions and mainly like Christian variations of it. Then there's Kabbalah with a C, which is the Sufi system. For the Sufis, which are the mystical sects of Islam, have within themselves a secret esoteric tradition, and they too have a very rich system that's involved with that, and that's called Kabbalah with a C. But the Kabbalah we're talking about here is Kabbalah with a Kof, Kabbalah with a K. And that Kabbalah begins with the concept of the Ein, or sometimes called the Ein Sof. Ein Sof means the endless, and Ein means nothing. And the idea, or the simple idea behind it, is that in the beginning was the endless, the Ein Sof. And the endless expanded to the boundary of the endless, and there was no end to its boundary. There was no vacancy. There was no division. There was no two. There was no separation. And when it arose in his desire, the desire of the endless, that there might even be a desire, the Zohar describes it as when it arose in the will of the king, the endless restricted itself, meaning the illimitable withdrew itself from all directions, and it created a vacancy in the endless where there was no vacancy. And this vacancy and this process of withdrawal, we call the Simsum, or the restriction. This vacancy is the place where all of the worlds, both upper and lower, would come into existence. And this idea of the Simsum, this idea of the restriction, most people attribute it to the Arizal, a great Mekubel, a great Kabbalist that lived in the 1500s. However, it's older than that. The actual source for the concept of the Simsum and the restriction, as the Arizal lays out, is to be found inside of the Zohar. The Zohar is the principal corpus of any true study of Kabbalah, and it is a commentary on the Torah, and it is divided between the portions of the Torah. For many of you that don't know what the Torah is, the Torah are the first 5 books of the Bible, which would be Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And so those 5 books which were called the books of Moses, is usually what they say in there, is actually one giant scroll. And the scroll was given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai. And so the Zohar is a commentary on this, and it's attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and is said to have been written about 2,000 years ago, at the time of the fall of the Second Temple, and was hidden away. There's a great mystery as to how it was uncovered. Some people say that the Zohar was uncovered by the Knights Templar when they were excavating the temple mound of Solomon in Jerusalem. They are said to have uncovered what many people thought was the Holy Grail, but was in truth the Zohar. And they did not understand these scrolls because many of them were Europeans and they did not know Aramaic, and the Zohar was written in Aramaic. So they took them into Spain, into Castile, where there was a heavy presence of Kabbalah already in existence. There was a ton of incredible Mekubalim that were there. There was Yosef Chikatilla and Abraham Abulafia and others. And the Templars presumably had them begin to translate these scrolls. So there's a whole history behind that. I'm not going to go too deep into it, the origin of it. But anyways, that is a esoteric and brief overview as to the things of it. So can I explain the Tree of Life diagram? Sure, I can explain some of them. So first off, one should understand that the Tree of Life diagram does not originate from outside of the Torah. It is inside of the Torah. It can be found inside of the Torah itself. It can be found inside of the very first verse of the Torah, in fact. And every single precept, the Zohar tells us, and every single thing inside of the Torah contains all the 10 spheros. So the 10 spheros are that of the Tree of Life. They are, you can see them here. They are the spheros. There's Kether, Chochmah, Bina, Da'as, Chesed, Gevurah, which is sometimes called Din, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and then here is a sphera called Malkut. And it's alluded in various places. For example, it's written that wisdom, which is the Hebrew word for chokhmah, wisdom, built a house with 7 pillars. Those 7 pillars are the lower 7 spheros, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malkuth, which is 7 in number. So wisdom built a house with 7 pillars, and by understanding, establishes it with Tevunah, which alludes to the sphere of Bina, and knowledge fills the house. Right? It's written that Da'as fills the house. And so we can see in those verses that I just described the Tree of Life, right? Chachma, wisdom built a house with 7 pillars. Those are the lower 7 spheros. Established it with Tevunah, understanding, or Bina, and filled it with Da'as. And so even the names, Chachma, Bina, Da'as, so on and so forth, are actually from the scriptures themselves. They don't originate from outside of the scriptures. They're to be found in the scriptures. Now, there are a lot of things that are to be found inside of the Tree of Life, and how are we to actually interpret these things, so on and so forth. And I can give some deep mysteries behind this. So, let's say, I'll take a moment to see if I can answer just a couple of questions. Shoshana, shalom, good to see you here. Someone says, the Kabbalah is copied from the early Sufis. No, the Sufis, so Islam started like 600 AD. Christianity was 2,000 years ago. Judaism is the first monotheistic religion in the world. And there are mystical, as you might even call, Kabbalistic writings, even amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they're very self-evident in some of the writings that were found, and even the Nag Hammadi, there was ideas that were centralized around that. Many people call that stuff Gnosticism now, because there was a branch of Judaism that kind of branched out during the early Christian segments, but there were esoteric writings that would be considered Kabbalah before that. Now, there are levels to, or types of Kabbalah, right? There's Kabbalah we would call Lurianic, which is Kabbalah according to the teachings of the Arizal, and there's Kabbalah that's involved with the 10 Sfirot, and then there's even other traditions of Kabbalah, which are meditative in nature, so on and so forth, but it's actually quite the opposite. The Sufis got their mysteries from the Kabbalah, just like the Christians did, because the first monotheistic religion is Judaism. Christianity would not exist without Judaism, and Islam would not exist without Judaism. So, Shalom, Guy. Good to see you here. Shalom, everybody. Okay, so brief explanation there. So if you guys would like to, I can expound a little bit more about the Tree of Life, and perhaps we can get into one more level about it. So what year is this scripture? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but again, what you guys are currently looking at, this particular scroll was written by myself with the assistance of an apprentice here. And this is what's called an Elon. So this is a scroll of the worlds, and they're used in order to navigate and the study of Kabbalah, the study of the Torah. So I can share with you guys I can show you a glimpse of an actual Elon as well. This one came from Jerusalem, but here we go. So you guys can see here a glimpse of an Elon. Right? They discuss the worlds and the spheros, the part 2 themes, so on and so forth, as you can see down here. Right, so you can see like Olam HaBariah, the world of Bariah, so on and so forth. Zaran Pin, Reclaim Pin, Abaima. Thank you guys. So what we're currently looking at here is the word Ain. So what this little portion here is talking about, and it actually quotes in Aramaic here, the Zohar, right? Barish hormnuta de melacha, right? In the beginning of the will of the king, Galif Galufe, he engraved an engraving, but Tehiru, inside of what's called the Tehiru. So let's see if I can show you guys something else. Perhaps I can get to an explanation of it. Okay. So this is from the opening of the Zohar when discussing the commentary on Bereshis A. And it's describing the process of creating the botzina, this hard spark, and this engraving. And this engraving talks about the 231 gates. These 231 gates is a concept heavily discussed and talked about inside of another Kabbalistic work, which is attributed to Avraham Avinu, that is, of course, Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah, Sefer Bahir, and Sefer HaZohar are the 3 principal texts that define Kabbalah. And inside of Sefer Yetzirah is a concept called the 231 gates. And this is, as it says, Galif Galufe, that he engraved an engraving, but Tehiru, in this thing called the Tehiru. Now, the Tehiru has interesting translations. Sometimes the Tehiru is used to describe a vacancy, and it's an allusion to that withdrawal. Another explanation for the Tehiru is rooted in the word tahor, which means pure or simple, and sometimes will be translated as like a pure light, or sometimes even a simple light. Now, Tehiru has a numerical value of 232, right? Tet is 9, He is 5, Yod is 10, Resh is 200, and Vav is 6. And alludes to the 231 gates. Now, the 231 gates is a concept that's discussed regarding the creation, and it says that the world was essentially created through the 231 gates. Now, the 231 gates are the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet when they're paired with each other. It says Aleph with every letter with Aleph, Beit with every letter with Beit. They repeat in a cycle, so on and so forth, and exist within 231 gates. That's because there are 231 combinations. Now, to understand that idea, I'll go down a little bit and show what that actually looks like. So, to understand what that actually looks like, it means Aleph with every letter with Aleph. It says he placed them in a circle. So if you place them in a circle, and then we're to connect every line, Aleph with every letter with Aleph, so on and so forth, they create 231 combinations. These 231 combinations should be seen as the totality of potential. Because it's written, Vayomer Elohim Yehur V'Yehur, God said, let there be light, and there was light. And so, according to the Kabbalists and according to the Torah, God created everything essentially through speaking. And because everything was created through speech, everything was created thus through what's called the Lashon HaKodesh, or the holy language. This holy language refers to the language that God spoke. God spoke Hebrew. Therefore, the Lashon HaKodesh is the Hebrew language. And because there are 22 letters in the Hebrew language, whose entire phonetic structure is to be found inside of the Torah scroll, there were thus 231 combinations. And the way we should understand it is essentially that the Hebrew letters are the programming language of existence. We shouldn't actually think of it in terms of like speaking, although in many degrees this is true, but we should rather, a more simple way of understanding it is that the Hebrew language is the underlying programming code, right? A programming language. Any software is a program, and the program is written with code. So reality is essentially written with a code. And that code is called the 231 gates. Everything comes through those 231 gates because it represents the first order of a potential. The 22 letters, each letter has a specific meaning, and the specific meaning can be seen as representing certain concepts or perhaps even principles, right? Aleph, it comes from the Hebrew word for air. And so then therefore it has this connotation of air, and we can even look at it as perhaps even gases. So then therefore when we say Aleph with every letter with Aleph, we can really read that as the principle of gases, or the principle of air with every principle, and every other principle with the principle of air. And so then once we begin to look at the 22 letters as in terms of these kind of building blocks of reality, the 231 gates thus represent the totality of potential, the first order of potential. And these, of course, are Aleph with every letter with Aleph, just within the 22 themselves. As soon as we take it into other orders of magnification, it gets astronomical. But nonetheless, that's the basic understanding of the hard spark and the engraving of the 231. So we'll go back up to the Ain real briefly, and I'll explain just a little bit more about the Tehiru and some proofs of that. So this first diagram again is an allusion specifically to Ain. Ain is the first level of existence. Ain means nothing. There's Ain, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Or. These are the first three stages of reality. And the Milui, so the term Milui means the expansion. That means if I were to take this and spell it out, right? So this is the letter Aleph, and so I would spell it Aleph, Lamed, Fe. And this is the letter Yod, and so I would spell this Yod, Vav, Dalet. And this is the letter Nun, and I would spell this Nun, Nun. If I were to add these all together, 1 plus 30 plus 80 is 111. 10 plus 6 plus 4 is 20. Nun plus Nun is 50 plus 50 is 100. The value of this would be 231. 231 alludes to those 231 gates. An expansion, meaning a melui, hints to this idea of an emanation. And it also hints to the idea of the other side, which gives us this real deep, profound concept of these 231 gates, essentially expanding or withdrawing within inside of the Ain itself. Furthermore, the expansion of the word Ain, which has a value of 231, hinting to the gates we just discussed. Kalel is the numerical value of the word Tehiru. Tehiru is a term that's used for the vacancy, as I was explaining before. And quoting the Zohar here, Baresh Hormnuta, at the beginning of the will, the Melacha of the king, Galif Galufe, he engraved an engraving, but Tehiru, in the Tehiru. And so this Tehiru, which is again sometimes translated as a vacancy, is an allusion to the 231 gates. It posits the idea that this engraving, Galif Galufe, inside of the Tehiru, Ilah, which is above, Botsina, Kardenuta, which is this hard spark inside of the Tehiru, is the 231 gates. And so the later Kabbalists stated that inside of the Tehiru, or inside of the vacancy, was the 231 gates. We'll talk about what the Simsum is and the vacancy is in just a second. There's one more very profound and deep level that has to deal with the concept of the Tehiru. So in a much more advanced Kabbalah, there's worlds, right? Atzilus, Beriah, Yetzir, and Asiya. And these are represented by names of God. We call the 72, 63, 45, and 52. They are shown here, and this is the construct of the partsufs of 72, 63, 45, 52. They're all derived from the expansions of the name of God, which is Yod, He, Vav, and He. And you can see this first one is expounded with a Yod. So if I just expound Yod, Yod, Vav, Dalet, and He is He Yod, and Vav is Vav Yod Vav, and He is He Yod, the numerical value of this is 72. Likewise, if I expand it but change this Vav with an Aleph instead of a Yod, the value is 63. If I expand them all with an Aleph, Yod, He Aleph, Vav, He Aleph, the value is 45. And if I just expand them with He, Vav, and He, then the numerical value is 52. Now these four names of Yud Ke Vav Ke expanded correspond to the four worlds, Atzilus, Beriah, Yetzirah, Asiya, and they're called the roots of these things. Each one contains 10 letters, because in truth they refer to the 10 Spheros. And you can see that here, Yud Vav Dalet, He Yud, Vav, He Yud. So there are 10 letters that correspond to the 10 Spheros of Atzilus. That's the 72 name. The 63 name, the same likeness, Yud Vav Dalet, He Yud, Vav Aleph Vav He Yud. It too contains 10 letters and 10 Spheros. The same thing with the 45, and there's a big secret in the 52. Nonetheless, these are called the heights of the partsufs. This is a very, very lofty Lurianic concept that's talked about in very advanced Kabbalah. And these partsufs and their heights, for those who are a little bit more advanced here, essentially are alluding to Rikain Pin, the height of the Nukva, which would be the partsufins of Leah and Rachel. And then we have the Zeran Pin, and then we have the Nukva. And so essentially we have Abba, Ima, Zeran Pin, and Nukva, right? And that's what these correspond to. So 72 plus 63 plus 45 plus 52 equals 232. It equals the value of Tehiru. The exact same thing. So therefore, inside of this Tehiru, inside of this restriction, inside of this withdrawal, inside of this Simsum, are the roots of these names, 72, 63, 45, and 52, which are the roots of these worlds. Because essentially, God created existence through his divine name. The name Yod He Vav He, the name of God, the ineffable name, which is not spoken. The world was created by the power of his name, meaning he used his name to create reality. And so then, therefore, there are deep secrets. Now, in order to understand the 72, 63, 45, and 52 names, you must read the Zohar. You must know the Zohar. And in the context that I'm revealing it here, you must also be familiar with the concepts of Eitz Chaim and the concepts behind the Lurianic Kabbalah to fully grasp this. So for us to continue the idea behind this, we'll go down and I'll show you guys the level of the restriction or the level of the Simsum. So at the very top of here, you can see Ein, and I write the Milui, or the expansion, is Aleph Yod Nun. And I say the gematria, that means gematria here, is 231. Okay? And then I say 231, Razin, is the secret of the Tahiru. Right? Because the Tahiru is the gematria 231, Walim Kalel. And I say that this is the Sod, meaning the secret of Ayin Base 72, Samek Gimel 63, Mem He 45, and Base Nun 52. And their gematria is also 231. And so the very beginning of this Elon is a discourse, a commentary on the Zohar's opening for creation. And again, this is in Aramaic here. Aramaic uses the same letters as Hebrew, but they are different. So therefore, the idea of the creation as it is posited and laid out by the Zohar regarding this heart spark has to deal with the 231 gates, the Tahiru, the 72, 63, 45, 52 names, etc. Now, there are some Kabbalistic works that go into some detail about this, so I'll go ahead and just share one of them with you that just are like a little bit more advanced. So, this is a copy of Sefer Eitz Chaim Shabagan. You can see it's very filled with notes, and you can see the various rabbinical seals inside of it, and they're from Jerusalem. Because when we're talking about Kabbalah and in the terms of Judaism, Kabbalah is really the heart of Judaism, right? Because we're talking about the inner dimensions of the Torah. We're not talking about really mysticism, and we're not really talking about the occult, right? When we talk about Kabbalah, we're talking about the inner dimensions of the Torah itself, the secret levels of the Torah. We're talking about the secret levels of the Bible. We're not talking about like some outside thing. And therefore, when it comes to this type of material, it's really important for you to read from authoritative sources and to learn your material from sources that are authoritative. So in here, there's some explanations and examples of what we're getting ready to look at, some ideas of the Simsum, so on and so forth. I'm going to see if I can find for you guys an example of what I just said. So give me just a second, and perhaps I'll be able to pull that up. There we go. All right, so here's an example. So what I just explained regarding the Tehiru, we can see here, right? So we can see Atzilus, Bariah, Yetzir, and Asiya, and we can see the Milui right up here, it says, and they're attached or across from this Milui, meaning this expansion of these names of God. The 72 name, 63 name, 45 name, 52 name, which again correspond to the worlds of Atzilus, Bariah, Yetzir, Asiya, Abba, Ima, Zaram, Pin, Nukva, and the four letters ultimately of Yod, He, Vav, and He. So the name of God, which is Yod, Ke, Vav, Ke, right? The letter Yod corresponds to Chokhmah in the world of Atzilus. The letter He corresponds to the sphere of Bina and the world of Bariah. The letter Vav having a numerical value of 6, hence to the 6 spheres, Chesed, Gevurah, Tifras, Netzach, Hod, and Yisod, and is the world of Yetzirah. And the final letter He is Malkuth in the world of Asiya. Thus, the name of God is the secret of the Sphirot, the tree of life. It is also the secret of the worlds. But going back and digressing to what I stated before, 72, 63, 45, and 52, we'll go back up here. We can see them again laid out, right? The heights, 72, 63, 45, 52. Someone says they have the Pritzker edition. I have the Pritzker edition as well. Daniel Matt is an amazing translator, and he did an amazing job. But someone who commissioned it, they took it upon themselves to redact or to remove the sections called the Raya Mehemna, the Faithful Shepherd. And this took out an exorbitantly large portion of the Zohar. So the Pritzker edition is missing voluminous amounts of information. They mention this in the foreword, but it's very problematic because, one, how in the world do you think you have the authority to translate a book and remove almost half of its contents, some exorbitant amount of its contents? I mean, it's insane. And that, unfortunately, was really damaging because the Western world was getting exposed to these secret teachings, these esoteric levels of the scriptures, but they did not translate it faithfully and fully. And from a scholarly perspective, they did a huge misservice. If you're going to translate something, translate everything. Just because you don't like something doesn't give you the right to censor it. But the Pritzker edition is highly censored. I don't recommend it because they've cut out and removed the most critical elements, and some of the most esoteric passages of the entire Zohar are in the section called the Faithful Shepherd, and they've taken it upon themselves to just cut it all out. And so when they translated the Pritzker edition of the Zohar, it's butchered. It's butchered beyond belief. So my personal recommendation, I actually have a chief disciple. His name is Shaul Malcho, and we are working right now on translating a true version of the Zohar, with zero redaction, everything inside of it. And a fun fact, we've also translated Tikkun Zohar. Now the full Zohar has been translated, and the full Tikkun Zohar has been translated. I just have not announced its release yet, but I will be announcing its release in the future. So for those of you that are really looking for an entire copy of the Zohar, unredacted, be on the lookout for that. I'll be making an announcement on it soon. Regarding, for now, if you're looking to read the Zohar, I would recommend you guys read the Kabbalah Center version of the Zohar. I don't agree with the Kabbalah Center hardly at all in all of its other points, but nonetheless, they at least kept the original Aramaic inside of the Zohar, and they translated just about everything. A couple things they didn't, but just about everything. So if you're an English reader, I recommend that version. Nonetheless, we'll continue on here. So, did I find any lost books? Yes, absolutely. So, this right here, what we're looking at, is the Simsum. So we talked about the idea of the Ain, we talked about the idea of the illimitable or the endless, and now we're moving on to this idea of the restriction, the Simsum. And will my version be purchasable? Yes. Yes. All kudos and credits here to Shaul Malcho. He knows exactly who he is. Out of all of my Talmidim, people that I've taught the Kabbalah to, he is one of the loftiest, incredible Torah giant. He's translated more books than I can possibly even describe here. But yeah, so if you're listening to the Shaul Malcho later, a major props and respect given where it is due. So I will be making an announcement for its obtainability. So you guys just go ahead and keep an eye out for that. So this right here is called the Simsum, the restrictions. This is the secret of Adam Kadmon. And again, we were talking about the idea of the endless withdrawing itself. And we learned that the endless withdrew itself in concentric circles, very much and similar to the way the layers of an onion. And so what we see are a series of concentric circles. The idea of this is called the Simsum, or the restriction. And for those of you that are wondering what's written here, these are all the levels of Adam Kadmon. And so this is what this is all talking about over here. You can see right here, it says from the Keter of the Adam Kadmon. And it begins ultimately with the Nikud. So this is the Nikud right, called Kamatz, and corresponds to the sphere of Keter. The second one's called Patach, and corresponds to Chokhmah, Bina, Chesed, Gevura, right? Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod. And then when we get into the levels of Yisod, we then enter into Malkuth. Now Malkuth, when the light withdrew itself into that thing called the hard spark we were talking about, it created essentially the Ofer, or the dust. The dust is this idea of the destroyed vessels. So essentially when the illimitable withdrew itself, it shattered these vessels. This withdrawing was this great shavir, this great breaking of light. And as the light withdrew, these vessels are said to have shattered. All of these destroyed worlds, which was the byproduct of God or the illimitable or infinity withdrawing its own light, created what's called the Ofer, what's called the dust. And as you guys know, man was made from the dust. So this dust is a major concept that's talked about in very esoteric places, but that's nonetheless what's going on here. Up here, this is what's called the Or Yoshar, right? This is what's called the straight light. And you can see at the top of it, it says the Olam Malbush, or the universe of the garment. And again, we can see the 72, 63, 45, and 52 names, which we discussed earlier when talking about Ain. And it says they are called the 231 gates, Sha'arim. Now, there are 22 letters, and they're divided here 11 and 11. They are the fronts and backs of the Sefirot. Now, that concept is discussed in another place, not here. It's discussed later on in the scroll. Perhaps we'll talk about it. And nonetheless, here is what's called the Ora Yoshar. And then we have, this is called the Partsufim of Zeranpin. This is the Partsufims of Abba and Ima. This is the Partsufim called Saba. This one's called Tavuna. These two here are called Leah and Rachel. And then this Partsuf right here is called Yaakov. And these are all inside of what's called the straight light. So these are like the Sharosh. Perhaps you could even explain it as the roots of the Partsufim themselves. This is a big deal. Over here on the right-hand side, letters of each expansion refer to the 10 spheros of every world, so on and so forth. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I would be here for hours if I was to try and kind of catch everyone up into the explanations of what the Tehillah is. So for the sake of the video, we'll go ahead and move on down. We'll look at this next little segment here. So, all of these borders are different. A lot of time and energy went into bringing beauty and adorning the secrets, because when you're talking about the secrets of God, or you're talking about the secrets of the Torah, or the Bible, as you guys would call it, it's important to honor those things, and it's important to not make light of them. And so because of that, I wouldn't just write this stuff down. I mean, I could have written it down on a piece of paper real simply. I could have just scrabbled some notes in a journal somewhere. But because one should have Yirah, one should have awe and reverence of God, it's not fitting to talk about God in a profane way, in a way that does not honor him as king and glorious and creator of all things. Therefore, this Elon is adorned with extreme beauty. It's adorned with extreme beauty and elegance, because that's the beauty and elegance fitting for a king. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, is the King of Kings. Therefore, whenever I write about him and those things, I adorn it with glory fitting for a king, to the best of my ability. Even all of my glory is nothing to the king, and I can never capture his glory, but I can at least attempt with the best of my capability to honor him to the capacity in which I am able to do so. So this next portion right here actually talks about the Mashiachin. So these are the messiahs, right? So in Judaism, there's not just one Messiah. it's probably staggering for other people to hear this. A lot of people come from Christian backgrounds, some people come from Muslim backgrounds, and some people just come from, kind of generic backgrounds. But in Judaism, there isn't just one Messiah. There are actually 4 Messiahs, and 5 if you really want to get technical about it. We call them the Mashiachim, and they are the 4 letters of the word Mashiach. They are Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Joseph, Mashiach ben Dan, and Mashiach ben Ephraim. These are the 4 letters of the word Mashiach. Mashiach in Hebrew, for those that don't know, is the word Messiah. And these 4 Mashiachim, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben Ephraim, and Mashiach ben Dan, correspond to the 4 letters of the word Messiah, or Mashiach. There's also another Messiah who is called the Messiah of the Nations. And this is a non-Jewish Messiah. And this is alluded to by Cyrus. So, fun fact, in the Tanakh, the only person who's called Messiah is Cyrus. Cyrus was a Persian king who set the Jews free from Babylon. And God says that this is Cyrus, my Messiah, whom I appointed. Now, you can go look in the scriptures. Go check out that verse on Cyrus. He is called the Messiah. Now, Cyrus was of the nations. And our sages actually comment that if that is Cyrus who freed them from Babylon and would have went to Jerusalem to actually go build the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, that the redemption would have occurred. However, he didn't. So therefore, this is the idea of there's a Mashiachin of the nations, And there's a lot of debate about this whole thing. Some people think it's Trump. I'm pretty sure many people have probably heard this idea that, the Jews think Trump is Messiah, so on and so forth. They say he's Cyrus on the coin, right? He's using the temple shekel. On the back of it, it shows Cyrus, and it shows Trump on the other side. And they say, Trump is the numerical value of Mashiach ben David. All these other different things. Like, there's a ton of interesting things about it. But the idea of this final Mashiach that I was talking about is called the Mashiach of the Nations. This is like a non-Jewish messianic figure that manifests himself and aids greatly to Israel, and the same way that Cyrus did. And again, Cyrus was called the Messiah, despite the fact he was not Jewish. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. This right here deals with the roots, or we call this sharosh, that's the Hebrew word for root, of these Mashiachim. And they're rooted in a very lofty and advanced concept found in the Lurianic Kabbalah and very advanced study of the 5 chesadim and the 5 gevuros. The concept of the 5 chesadim and the 5 gevuros are expounded at great length in the Lurianic writings, and they have their origin specifically in the Zohar, in the sections of the Yirah Zuta, and softly mentioned in the Yirah Rabbah, which are arguably the 2 most esoteric portions of the entire Zohar. They are found in the plain Torah, if you know how to look for them. Perhaps one day I'll go into detail about this. I have a video on my YouTube channel that gives a commentary on the very first verse of the Torah. And in that commentary, I actually reveal how in the first verse this concept is actually alluded to. It's said specifically in the word Hashemayim, right? The heavens, where the letter He has a numerical value of 5. And the word Shemayim, meaning heaven, is formed from 2 words, Eish, meaning fire, and Mayim, meaning water. These are the 5 chesadim and the 5 gevuros, which are the 5 waters and the 5 fires. This is the word Hashemayim. In the example, Bereshis, Bara Elohim, et Hashemayim vet charetz. In the beginning, God created et, the heavens, va'et, the earth. So we won't go into too much detail about this. Nonetheless, what should be understood is that in these 2 side partsus, right here, which are called Leah and Rachel, are a gathering of what are called the 5 chesadim and a gathering of what's called the 5 gevuros. And these are the roots of the 2 Mashiachim, Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben David is called humble and riding on a donkey, a chamor, and Mashiach ben Yosef is called the firstlings of his herd. He's associated with the ox. It's alluded to in a very esoteric understanding of should your ox and donkey fall into a pit. The pit is the idea of the Simsum, the restriction, and the ox and donkey that fall into the pit are the two messiahs, Messiah ben David and Messiah ben Joseph. These Mashiachin are called fallen. They're called, like the word Nephilin. The word Nephal means to fall. And the Zohar describes these two messiahs, being Messiah ben David and Messiah ben Joseph, as fallen. They are the ox and donkey that fell into a pit, and so the Torah says, should your ox and donkey fall into a pit, etc. Okay, so we've gone through some incredibly lofty things. I'm not going to go into the details on it because it's very advanced material, but I will give you guys just a glimpse of what we've been looking at. I'll go back down on it. Most of this is written in Aramaic and Hebrew. Again, this scroll is 45 feet long. We're not going to go through the entire scroll. Just kind of go through some of it. And describes the primordial workings of creation and existence. Of course, this is the great Sita Achra, talking about the other side. Right, the seven-headed serpent. I'm sure you guys have all heard about that. Okay. So I'll go ahead and wrap this part up. We'll go into perhaps one last thing. Good to see you here too as well, Christina. Right. And unfortunately, 99% of what's called Kabbalah now is Kabbalah. In terms of like true Kabbalah, in terms of the mystical aspects of the Bible, a lot of that stuff is kind of hermetic, so on and so forth, and has to deal kind of with the Western occult tradition. Just give me 1 second, guys. I'm just rolling this scroll back up so it doesn't become damaged. And then I'll share with you guys a different Elon that I'm currently working on, and maybe describe some of the mysteries to you. Shadow box. So I have published quite a number of books. They are called Sefer Yirah. Means awe. I'll show them here. So there we go. It's Mishnah, Shulchan Aruch. These are all translations by Shalom Malcho. Absolutely, there's no words to describe what he's doing. Here are the writings that I've written myself, and particularly if you're really wanting to learn this material, this book right here, which is called Sefer Yirah 9, or the Likutei Yirah, is where you would want to begin if you're trying to read it in terms of layman's. It's called the Torah of Ascension. And this QR code inside of the beginning of the book will give you the entire book for free. So I don't know if you guys are able to scan that or however, but if you guys can screenshot it or scan it, this is the entire book for free. I've made the entire book available for the world because these teachings are the inheritance of existence, not just the inheritance of one group or another group, but the inheritance of existence. Okay. For those, if you didn't get the scan, there's an alternative method. You can click on the link inside of on my TikTok bio, and it'll take you to a link tree where you can click a link and it'll give you the entire download for free. You can also find the QR code. I have a YouTube by the name Restoration of the Breach where I teach Kabbalah there. And if you guys would like to find the QR code during every opening segment of my videos, I flash the QR code so you can download it there as well. And again, it is the entire Sefer. There's zero cost, no strings attached. It's 100% free to anyone who's seeking it. So this is another one of the Sefers that I've written. I'll show it to you guys real briefly. Thank you, Volvo. Thank you guys all for the likes and the comments and everything. Thank you. So I read all of my books, mainly are written in Aramaic and Hebrew. And this is a very large sefer. I wish you guys could possibly see it in relation to like a hand. You guys can probably see it in relation to a hand right there. Give you guys kind of an idea of how big it is. I don't know, maybe it's like 2 feet. Not exactly sure, it could be bigger. And everything's here is written in Aramaic, so on and so forth. Some of it's in Hebrew. So that book is called Likutei Yirah. It's called the Torah of Ascension. And again, there are links to download it. You can find it inside of my Linktree bio. That's in my TikTok bio. And then you can also find it on my YouTube videos during the opening sequences. My YouTube is the exact same name as my TikTok, Restoration of the Breach. Yeah, so let's give you guys just a little bit of a background glimpse as to what's going on inside of here. We discussed a lot of these concepts, Simsum, restrictions, so on and so forth. So I've been working on a new sefer. It's dealing with practical elements of ascension, practical elements of what angels are, heavens, so on and so forth. So if you guys would like to see a glimpse of it in the rough, I'm happy to show you guys. I'll let you guys let me know down below, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I do plan on going live regularly, just so you all know. It just waiting for the right timing and getting everything together, so on and so forth. And there's some difficulties because TikTok's an interesting platform. You know, many people kind of just stumble into the lives, and that makes it difficult to teach because many people will just be entering into the lives for the first time and they won't have the context behind what they're looking at, so on and so forth. And it would be a shame to rob them of the experience. So you guys would like to see behind the scenes look on one of the Elons? I can do that. So the current Elon that I'm writing right here is on goat skin. And it's one of the very few that deal with imagery. I usually don't use imagery directly, but this one is using imagery. And it's very esoteric imagery, and it has to deal with the concepts of angels, the creations of heavens, so on and so forth, the secrets of the heart, so on and so forth. So perhaps I can show that. One moment. We can talk a little bit about what that is. So this is a rough scroll. This is currently in the process of being written. This is not finished. So what you guys are looking at is a behind the scenes look at an actual scroll being written. Now this is the first portion, the first section, the first segment of what will be possibly 10 pieces. This is an entire goat hide, if you're wondering. So this is goat skin, just so you know. All of these first parts have been inked in. I have yet to write the explanations in as to what we're actually looking at. Okay. But this has to deal with the secrets of the chambers of the heart and the creation of angels, right? So there are chambers in the heart. So the heart is a secret of the Sefirot of Tiferet. And Tiferet corresponds to the heart. It's right there in the chest. And Tiferet is called the sun, and the metal of the sun is called gold. Regarding this, it's written furnace for gold. And so therefore, the heart is called a furnace. The heart being called a furnace teaches us that there are fires in the heart. These fires in the heart are 7 different kinds of influences. These 7 influences are referred to as the Merkava, or the chariot, influences of the chariot, we call them the 7 forms. So, your spirit form, desire form, your higher self, your soul form, emotion form, mental form, and your physical form. These forms, these influences, right, our emotional influences, our mental influences, so on and so forth, effectuate their lights or influences inside of the heart. And so the heart is being shown here with 7 rays or 7 colors. And these 7 colors are different types of influences that are inside of the heart, which I've described as a furnace. Now, these influences begin in the heart. This is the root of what's called the bestial soul. And they end from the heart. These influences enter in the heart. They ascend into the mind. When they ascend into the brain, these influences ascend into the brain, they become thoughts. The process of the influences from the heart entering into thoughts is the creation of angels. The word angel in Hebrew is melach. A melach means a messenger. The light is this influence in the heart, as it was described. These influences then ascend from the heart into the mind, where they become a thought. That thought is called an angel. Now, there are good thoughts and bad thoughts. We have bad thoughts here, good thoughts here. These thoughts, or angels, gather together to create concepts. These concepts are different heavens. These heavens refer to the different places or states of existence by which the individual enters and experiences. So the individual, in truth, you are existence, right? You are existence. What unites us in life and death and hell and any place you could be at? What transcends life and death is existence. If you can die and go to hell, you're existing there. That's existence. So then what is life really? Is life what we think it is, or is the true reality existence? The answer is existence. Therefore, you can exist in Sheol or Gehinnom, but you can exist in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, and so on and so forth. And so, going back to the concept that I just described, these thoughts or angels gather together and they create concepts. These concepts are heavens, firmaments filled with angels or thoughts, which are all formed by the influences of the heart, which are all the various lights that were garbed. For the angels are various kinds of lights or influences that have become thoughts, that have gathered together to form concepts. And out of this is birthed a great primordial serpent. And that great primordial serpent is called the persona, is the accumulative sum of experiences. It is why the serpent has 7 heads, because it refers to those 7 lights that I described, the collective dross, or zoma, or sums of experiences built by them. And what was the nature of the serpent? It spoke to the woman. An example, it speaks to the soul. This speaking is the collective identity we have. Because the truth is, you have a mind, you're not your mind. You have a mind, you're not your mind. You're the choice between your mind and your actions. You have emotions, you're not your emotions. You have emotions, you're not your emotions. You are the choice between your emotions and your actions. You have desires, you are not your desires. You are the choice between your desires and your actions. You have a higher self. You are not your higher self. You are the choice between your higher self and your actions, meaning you are the existence. You can choose to exist in your mind. You can choose to exist in your emotions. You can choose to exist in your desires. You can choose to exist in your higher self, so on and so forth. But you have these things, you are not these things. The serpent, which is birthed from all those lights, which form all of those thoughts, all those angels, which form all those heavens, all those concepts, and birth this persona or collective identity, the sums of experiences, some people call it ego, is not you and can never be you. In truth, it doesn't even really exist. It only thinks it exists. and we fortify its existence by acknowledging it. But the truth is, it doesn't really exist. It is perception, reality as perceived. Perception, by its very nature, cannot be reality, because it's reality as it is perceived, thus not true reality. In fact, we're virtually not capable of experiencing true reality. Therefore, our entire sense of existence or reality, or what we think to be true, is actually not real at all. It's an amalgamation of half-truths, so on and so forth. And these collectively accumulate until it forms a persona, which then speaks to you. And that, of course, is the serpent. So that's the basic ideas of what we're looking at here. This is very, very, very lofty. These are very lofty concepts. This is just the first piece of the scroll. There will be 10 pieces. This is the beginning part, talking about the lights inside of the heart, how they ascend into the mind. They become garbed in thoughts, which are angels, good thoughts and bad thoughts. And these angels, which are good thoughts and bad thoughts, then create hellscapes if they're bad. And so a person can exist inside of Gehinnom, the 7 chambers of Gehinnom, the fires of Gehinnom, while they're alive. And likewise, a person can experience this place of bliss and be inside of a firmament or a heaven of good thoughts, meaning good angels. And this is what's written, that he's lifted by the wings of the angel, lifted by the hands of the angels. It's this idea that the existence is lifted up by these angels, or an example, existence is lifted up by thoughts. And these thoughts then enter these heavens, which are these various existences. And these various existences are these various hellscapes, if they're negative, and various firmaments and heavens, if they're positive and good. So, what happens after death? You exist. Let's say you stand before God. You're existing before God. Let's say God throws you into hell. You're existing in hell. Let's say you go to heaven. You're existing in heaven. So then, what really is life? Because when you go to sleep at night, where's your existence? It's in some firmament. You're existing somewhere in a firmament. You're existing somewhere in the heavens. So what is life and death, really? And what are we really? We seem to attribute it to life, but the truth is it's existence. And existence is always now. Existence wasn't the past. Existence isn't the future. In the past, you were existing now. In the future, you're existing now. There is no past. There is no future. There is now. There was always now. Now is existence. God is existence. Nothing can exist outside of God. God is existence. And we are garbed existence. Now, there's a great secret behind that. I won't go into that in this video. So, I'll tell you a deep secret. Suffering is a byproduct of evil. Evil is a byproduct of error. Error is a byproduct of ignorance. Ignorance is called darkness. People walk in darkness. It means people walk in ignorance. Because people walk in ignorance, people walk in error. Error is produced by ignorance. And because people walk in error, they produce suffering. Suffering is the byproduct of error. Error is a byproduct of ignorance. Ignorance is darkness. Light is the only answer. Illumination is the only answer. Because someone is ignorant, they eat something poisonous. Because someone is ignorant, they touch a hot stove. Because someone is ignorant, they do things that are dangerous. But if they were to have light, meaning they knew, they could avoid the error, thus avoid suffering. And we suffer, we're afraid to die. This too is error. Why would you be afraid to die? God is eternal. And what do you think is powering you? God. God is what powers you. Show me a person that's outside of God. Show me something outside of God. It's impossible. Everything is powered by God. Everything is powered by the endless, the illimitable. It is the root, it is the true existence behind everything in existence. The table, the rug, the clouds, the animals, the grass, the trees. Everything in existence exists only within side of God, which means God is the true existence. If God is the true existence, then as I've said, the suffering that comes even from the fear of death, why? There really isn't death. Death is what? A transference of existence? A transference of the state of existence? Because if you stood before the Creator at death, you're existing in front of the Creator. Then what is life? I think we confuse life with existence. Life is just existing in this material world. Life is existing in this material world. There's much more than life. Death is existing in the other world, on the other side. There's a lot more than that as well. So, the sequence of suffering. Suffering is a result of darkness. Darkness is ignorance. Ignorance produces error. Error produces suffering. Sometimes they say darkness is ignorance. Ignorance produces error, and error produces evil. All evil that human beings produce is a byproduct of error, which is a byproduct of ignorance. Where does evil exist outside of the human condition? Can you show me an animal that can look at something and say this is evil and that's evil, or this is good or that good, or so on and so forth? Or is nature in line with a harmonic process of existence? Evil is a byproduct of our own creation. Evil exists inside the human being. You take all the human beings off of planet Earth, where's evil at? Can you point to me evil when there's no human beings on Earth? Right. Evil comes from us. It's inside of us. Evil isn't something infecting you. Evil is a byproduct of our own ignorance, our own error as a species. Our error, our inability to recognize God in each other has created suffering. So we have wars. We hate each other. We speak all kinds of horrible things about each other. It's terrible. This is only a byproduct of ignorance. The true underlying cause of all reality is God. Nothing outside of that. When the mind becomes illuminated to the truth, light, which is, because what is darkness? Does darkness even exist? Darkness doesn't exist. Darkness is just the absence of light. There's no darkness. There is no darkness. What is darkness? Darkness is the absence of light, which means when there's light, there's no darkness. Darkness is not this counter force to the light. People think that darkness is this counter force to the light. That's not what darkness actually is. Darkness is either presence of light or absence of light. In the same likeness that there's really no hot or cold. What is hot or cold? Presence of energy or not presence of energy? Not presence of energy means cold. Presence of energy we call hot. Hot and cold are just a spectrum of energy. Presence of energy or not presence of energy. If there isn't the presence of the light inside of a human being, we say they're cold-hearted. You have bad energy. If there is the presence of godliness, the presence of light, the presence of illumination and truth inside of a person, they say that person's good-hearted, that person's warm-hearted, so on and so forth. But really it's just energy, presence of it or absence of it. Same thing with darkness. There really is no darkness. There's just the absence of the light. When the light is there, there will be no more darkness. That's what's written. He'll drive out the evil spirit from the land. Meaning he'll drive out evil from the soul. And evil was a byproduct of error, and error was a byproduct of ignorance, which is darkness. When we as human beings at a collective level become illuminated, there will be no more darkness because there will be no more error. Simple as that. Okay. Many, many, many blessings to you all. I've been here for quite a while. If you guys like these kinds of teachings and want to learn more about Kabbalah, so on and so forth, my YouTube, Restoration of the Breach, has, 400 videos. Feel free to go check it out. TikTok has this love-hate relationship with me. Sometimes they like my content and sometimes they despise my content, so I'll be shadow banned for prolonged periods of time. But if you guys enjoy, feel free to give a follow. I will try to go live on a regular basis. I haven't quite figured out the scheduling for that, but I promise when I get there, I'll make some kind of announcement, Hashem willing, that TikTok will push that information out there. But contemplate. If you took anything away from this, I hope you guys got a glimpse of how to understand the nature of Kabbalah. But the ending part of it, take solace. Take solace. See God in each other. Light. Look at evil differently. Evil is a byproduct of error and ignorance. All right, everyone. Many, many blessings. As David HaMelech said, open my eyes, and we behold the wonders of your Torah. Amen, everyone. Shalom Mesila. Shalom Mesila.